But when I had the blood test finally, and I rang up the surgery to get the results, and the results said that they showed I was kind of normal, not in perimenopause, but I already knew that, when you're in perimenopause, your hormones fluctuate so much that one blood test alone, it doesn't really tell you much.
Today I'm joined by Anna to talk about something many women experience but often don't recognise at first, and that is perimenopause.
Anna, a fellow lady from the Northeast like myself, how are you doing today?
Very well, thank you, Emma. Yeah, great. Thanks for having me on. I'm really
Yeah,
pleased to
thank
be able
you.
to share my story.
I look forward to hearing about it. Yeah. So basically, you just recently celebrated your birthday. I'll let you reveal the age if you want to, but yes, you are in your 40s, but I can't believe that because you look mid-30s to me still. So that's amazing. So I just wanted to go back to sort of your late 30s, because today you're going to be talking about your perimenopause journey. I believe because we had a sort of chat before this talk, you started noticing changes in your body, just changes happening around sort of 39, age 39, is that correct?
Yeah, so yeah, you're right. It was my birthday a couple of weeks ago. I recently turned 42. So it was about 2.5 years ago, about 6 months before my 40th birthday, that I first noticed these kind of big changes out of nowhere. Yeah, I just all of a sudden I'd gone from being a really good sleeper, could kind of sleep anywhere, um, always, slept through the night, no difficulties there. And then all of a sudden I was just waking up 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. It wasn't all the time, it wasn't a nightly thing, but it was happening regularly enough to have an impact. And I just kind of wake up and feel like really wide awake, almost kind of like anxious, full of cortisol, full of adrenaline, and be unable to get back to sleep. And obviously alongside that, probably because of that, and as I know now, because of the hormonal changes that were going along, my anxiety increased massively at that time as well. And I was finding that I was getting super anxious about everyday things that had maybe made me slightly anxious. I've always been a little bit of a worrier at times, but yeah, at that time it just all seemed to come along at once. And yeah, it was kind of off the charts anxiety and lack of sleep.
Oh wow, sorry to hear that. So this just started happening just a few months before your 40th. And normally a regular sleeper sort of would sleep well through the night, and then suddenly you would just sort of start waking up 2, 3 in the morning. You mentioned that anxiety, you already sort of had a little bit of anxiety generally, but this seemed to just sort of ramp things up. How did that ramp it up? Like what were you experiencing sort of mind, body wise? What changed?
So I think kind of world events are often quite scary in this day and age, but I found that things that were happening on the news was just making me really, really anxious. I was crying a lot. I sometimes look after my friends' children, and that, it's always a bit nerve-wracking looking after friends' children, having to keep their children safe. But that kind of took on a new level of anxiety and worry that something might happen to them, for example. I'd say they were the main things that I noticed, but yeah, just general anxiety as well, just a general feeling of dread, really. Sometimes I didn't know what was causing it. There wasn't kind of a thing that had triggered it. It would just be this feeling of kind of panic or doom, that was obviously pretty horrible.
Yeah, that sounds really difficult to deal with, and especially when you don't quite know what's going on. Did How about your cycle? Were there any changes in your cycle around that time?
There were. I didn't put two and two together at that time, but yeah, it just so happened that around that time I'd gone from a really regular menstrual cycle where it wasn't kind of 4-week cycle that we're told is the normal, but you know, most women don't have a 4-week cycle. But I'd say it was about 5 to 6 weeks, and it would always kind of follow the same pattern, the same amount of PMT, the same cravings, the same kind of feelings that would come up, and then I would bleed for the same length of time, the same kind of heaviness of flow. It was always very, what's the word? It was the same each kind of 6 weeks or 5 to 6 weeks. That's another thing, not being able to find the right word, I've noticed in perimenopause, or the wrong word coming out, or just kind of brain fog. I sometimes really struggle to find the word that I'm looking for.
Yeah, and I've had a few conversations now with women, and the same theme keeps coming up. You know, not being able to find the word, or just the word just being there but not able to sort of access it. So yeah, this sounds rough. Just out of nowhere, you know, getting ready for your 40th, and you know, waking up at 2-3 a.m., anxiety, cycle changes. At this point, what were you thinking? Were you thinking like, you know, what's going on, or did you put a name to it at that point, or what were you thinking right then?
I really didn't know. I think because although I'd had those changes with my cycle, I didn't link those to what was happening with my sleep and my anxiety, and the kind of cognitive changes. I just felt like, am I losing my mind? You know, what the heck is going on? And it took someone else to point out to me that actually this was quite a common hormonal change in women. You know, I think we're often told that perimenopause is about having hot flushes, you know, something that I've never still experienced, and I don't know many women who have, but yeah, I really didn't realize how much my hormones were linked to kind of sleep and, you know, anxiety and things. So I just didn't know what was going on. Just felt it made me feel more anxious. Obviously, it kind of fed into that anxiety that I was experiencing. Yeah, I as I say, I wasn't sure, and it took one of my colleagues who I got into work one day, and I'd been awake since 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning again, and I felt dreadful, and I just burst into tears, had a cry on one of my colleagues who was a few years older than I was, and she was already in her perimenopause journey. She was already taking HRT, and she suggested that perhaps it could be my hormones, in particular progesterone. When your progesterone decreases, because that's responsible for keeping you calm and helping you sleep, among other things. She thought that that could be the reason why I was having those symptoms.
Brilliant. So it was your colleague that suggested that it could be perimenopause. And so at that time, you're still 39. So was there a thought of, well, I'm only 39, like, you know, I thought this kind of happens a bit later on, or was it more like relief, like there's a name to what I'm feeling?
Yeah, just relief really to know what's going on or what could be going on. And because I have friends who are older than me, and my sister's 4 years older than me, she just started taking HRT at that time. So I had spoken to women about perimenopause, and I had a bit of an understanding that actually it's not just about women kind of 45 plus. It's we're seeing it in younger women because of hormone disruptors that are present in our environment. Apparently, there is a thought that it's happening to women younger and younger. So actually, 39 isn't that young to be going through those changes. And yeah, I was just relieved to think, oh, actually, yeah, I'm not losing my mind. I'm not, you know, this is something that can be dealt with. So it was quite empowering, really, to know what was going on and that I could do something about it.
Brilliant. And I love that word empowering, to know that to yeah, just put a name to it and knowing that there was something you could do about it. So you mentioned having a great support system, your colleague at work, and also your sister and your friend. You talk about these type of things with your friends. So you guys, your friends are really close that you can open up and talk about these things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just generally, there's a lot more perimenopause and menopause chat these days. I think I'm very fortunate to be experiencing this at a time when it's really being spoken about in the media, and between friends. You know, I'll end up chatting to perimenopause about people I barely know. Yeah, it's a hot topic at the minute, and rightly so. It should have been all along. So yeah, I think it's really helpful to have those conversations and support each other through it, really.
Brilliant. I completely agree with you, Anna. So once you got that word perimenopause, your colleague had mentioned that she was on HRT, your sister too. And can I ask about their experience on the HRT, if you don't mind, or if we don't have to go there? I guess were they happy being on HRT, or what was their experience like?
Yeah, they were both big advocates for HRT. They'd had a great experience on it. My sister in particular, so she, in terms of her mental health, she didn't have the anxiety that I was experiencing, but she felt rage. She was getting really kind of irritable and angry. And she said when she started taking HRT, it was like she was back to her old self again. You know, it really helped her to feel like herself. And yeah, my colleague, she'd had a really positive experience with it as well. Yeah, so I was kind of at that time I didn't feel ready to take HRT, but I saw it as a really good option for the future.
Brilliant. Okay, that's so good to hear that your colleague and your sister have had really positive experiences on it. So you mentioned you weren't ready to take HRT yet. What other options did you look at that time?
Yeah, so at that time, I started doing a little bit of research about things that could help to manage the symptoms. And obviously, as is just so good for you in so many ways, the things that came up were, are you exercising regularly? Are you eating healthy diet of whole foods? Limiting your sugar, caffeine, processed foods. In terms of the sleep, so I started taking magnesium glycinate supplements, which really helped with my sleep. And I got a weighted blanket, which was fantastic, and it's one of my favorite things still. That the pressure is supposed to be really good for helping you to get to sleep and stay asleep, and I think that's certainly been the case for me. I still have a couple of days a month, I'd say, where I wake up early, but often I can get back to sleep, which is great. So yeah, those helped with my sleep, and as well, yeah, as I say, just making changes to my diet. I've always been a big sweet tooth person. I love my chocolate, and when I first started noticing those changes, I was having chocolate every day, at pretty much the same time every day. About 2 p.m., I'd have that afternoon crash, and I'd go to the canteen at work and buy chocolate, and yeah, my meals as well. I think I love cooking and I love eating a healthy diet, but sometimes I fall out of the habit of it. And at that time, I really had, and I was eating a lot of processed food. So yeah, kind of taking the time to prepare healthy meals, exercising regularly. So I mean, I was always doing yoga. I've been a big fan of yoga for many years, but I added in running and going to the gym and doing strength training. Still probably don't do as much as I should, but yeah, even just getting out and walking. I think nature's so good for your well-being and for providing calm and relaxation. So going out for walks on an evening. So yeah, all those things that those positive lifestyle changes that can benefit you in so many ways helped with my symptoms. And for about a year and a half, 2 years, I'd say, they kind of got things under control, where I was able to sleep, I was able to stay calm. It wasn't kind of affecting me day to day.
Oh, brilliant. Wow. So you took the lifestyle approach, just sort of changing the way you eat, because I know you're already an avid sort of exerciser anyway. You do a lot of yoga, so just, you mentioned doing strength training, running. Also you mentioned magnesium glycinate as well. That weighted blanket, that sounds so nice.
It's
So
lovely.
brilliant. So it's great to hear that all of that helped in terms of your symptoms, or helped you to get a better sleep. And did it help with the anxiety as well? Did you feel changes in that?
Yeah, absolutely. It just helped all round. And I think it was something that I needed to do anyway. It was a good way to kind of kickstart me, to get me back on a healthy track. And, you know, I think when you're in your 20s and early 30s, you could kind of get away with not looking after yourself as well as you should. But yeah, it really kind of highlighted that actually I need to really look after my body more. And the difference that it made just shows how important it is. And now it's just kind of, you know, I'm not 100% fantastic all the time. You know, I have still eat too much sugar probably, and I do allow myself treats. But I think for the most part, I just try and take good care of myself, and it does. It's really helped.
Brilliant, Anna. That sounds great. So this helped with your symptoms for quite some time, and then there came to a point where you did opt to go on HRT. Can I just ask you about that, please? Your experience with you know, getting a doctor's appointment, because we're based in the UK, and yeah, your experience of getting HRT.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, as I say, for about a year and a half to 2 years, those lifestyle changes were enough. But then I started noticing the same symptoms creeping back in, and I thought, okay, it's time to think about HRT. So I booked an appointment with my GP. I told the receptionist what my appointment was for, and she booked me in with our menopause specialist GP at my clinic. I don't know if that's a thing in every doctor's surgery. I'd be very surprised if it was, but I was fortunate that, you know, my surgery does have one. And so I went to see her. And even though she was the menopause expert, I was still kind of steeling myself for a bit of a potential fight to get HRT. Because I'd spoken to a lot of women who have really struggled. They've been told, no, you're too young. No, you know, come back in a few years. And, you know, not being taken seriously. So I did kind of steel myself for that appointment. But she was lovely. She was absolutely great. I think she was probably about 10 years older than me. So she's probably been through her own journey. And I just explained to her what I've explained to you today about the symptoms I've been having and all the changes that I'd made and how the symptoms were getting worse. So yeah, she was really lovely. She said that I was probably younger than most people that she would be putting on HRT. However, because I'd been able to explain the symptoms that I'd been having and the changes that I'd made in my lifestyle to try and help with them, and you know, the fact that this had been going on for a couple of years, she agreed to put me on HRT. So she wanted to do a blood test first. So we booked in a blood test that was a couple of weeks after that appointment, the soonest one we could get. And she said, you know, I'll prescribe you the HRT. So I chose to go on gel, estrogen, and progesterone tablets at that time. I thought that's going to be the best thing for me. But she asked me to wait until I'd had the blood test before I started taking them. The day of the blood test came and I completely forgot. I'd had the text message reminder the day before, and this is my perimenopause brain. I'd had a busy morning that morning, and it just completely slipped my mind, and I felt so bad. So that meant that I had to kind of wait longer again before I could start the HRT. But when I had the blood test finally, and I rang up the surgery to get the results, and the results said that they showed I was kind of normal, not in perimenopause, but I already knew that, when you're in perimenopause, your hormones fluctuate so much that one blood test alone, it doesn't really tell you much. It's just a snapshot, and it depends when it's taken. It'd have to be kind of taken really regularly to get a better picture. So I was still able to take the HRT, and because I think it's best practice to go from symptoms rather than blood tests. And obviously I did have the symptoms. So I started taking the estrogen gel that I applied every morning, and the progesterone tablets. So the estrogen gel I would apply every day, every morning, have to leave it to dry on my skin, and then I could kind of get ready. So I realized shortly after I started taking it, I was like, oh, this isn't for me. Standing around for 5 minutes waiting. I'm often at the gym at that time of day, so I was kind of stood in the gym changing rooms, just like, oh, this is a bit awkward, waiting for the estrogen gel to dry, or I'd forget to take it. The same with the tablets. The amount of nights I would be dozing off to sleep in bed, and then I'd realize, oh, I forgot to take the progesterone. After the first prescription that I was given of the gel and the tablets, I got in touch with my GP and asked if I could change onto the patches instead. So now I just have patches that I change every few days, and for 2 weeks they're estrogen only, and then for the next 2 weeks they're estrogen and progesterone combined, and they're working really well for me. I still have to set a alarm to remind myself to change them. I can't remember it off my own back, but they've been much better for me than the gel. So obviously there are different options. So for a lot of people, I think it's a case of finding what works for you.
Brilliant. Oh, thank you for sharing that. And I'm so glad to hear that you've had a really positive experience, because being in the UK, it's difficult to get an appointment. And so getting a menopause specialist, I hadn't heard of that before. So that's great that you were able to have access to that. So you'd recommend, if women are going in for appointments, they would ask if their surgery has a menopause specialist?
Absolutely, yeah. As I say, I didn't know that it was a thing until I made that phone call. And it's possibly not at every surgery, but yeah, it's definitely worth asking, isn't it? If that's what you go to the GP for.
Yeah, exactly. And I hear this so commonly, that you said you're kind of prepared to go in for a fight because, you've heard of other stories where maybe women's symptoms are not listened to very well. So it's so good to hear that you had the menopause specialist. And how did it feel to be actually listened to, and, your symptoms were listened to? You were, it sounded like you had a very good experience. How was that?
Yeah, it was lovely. It was unexpected. It was really lovely. And also I felt a bit guilty, because I know a lot of women who've really struggled with this and are still struggling with it. And they've been the doctors multiple times and still feel like they aren't being listened to. It's terrible, really. But yeah, I do feel very fortunate that wasn't the case for me, and I was taken seriously, and put straight on HRT. Oh, the other thing she told me as well, just to add this in, because I didn't know about this, there's an HRT prepayment certificate that my GP told me about. So yeah, I think that was about £25 for a year, and that means I don't have to pay for each individual HRT prescription. So that's fantastic.
Oh, that's amazing. So a HRT prepayment certificate.
Yeah.
Wow, 25 quid for the year, and that just saves you for the entire year.
Yeah, absolutely.
Ah,
Otherwise, it'd be very
fantastic.
costly every couple of months.
Yeah, of course, definitely. And it's interesting you mentioned about you went in for the blood test and it came back normal.
Mm.
And it just highlights the fact, as you said, hormones fluctuate throughout the month. Your blood test came through as normal, but you feel it's better to go on symptoms than blood tests because our hormones do fluctuate throughout the month.
Yeah, absolutely. In perimenopause, obviously, your hormones are declining, but they're not declining kind of steadily. They fluctuate massively. So yeah, a single blood test does not give a full picture. Um, and yeah, I think as well, there's so many symptoms of perimenopause. If I hadn't been told that my being unable to sleep and my anxiety were perimenopause, I wouldn't have known. And there's so many random symptoms that you wouldn't associate, indigestion, itchy ears, all these weird and wonderful things that are related to that hormonal changes. So yeah, if women have things that are going on that they're like, why is this happening? I would maybe kind of, think, could it be related to my hormones?
Yeah, completely, completely. And just your experience of being on HRT, you mentioned you had the gel first and then you've gone on to the patches. Just the gel didn't suit your
Hmm.
lifestyle in terms of putting the gel on and having to kind of awkwardly stand there for 5 minutes waiting for it to dry. Because, like, you're a gym girl, you want to get to the gym in the morning. So,
Hmm.
just about women, finding the right approach for them. It doesn't have to be one. You could try the patches or whatever suits their lifestyle.
Yeah, absolutely. And HRT isn't for everyone. I know, obviously, I've had a really positive experience with it, and a lot of people I know have, but it's not for everyone for many reasons. Some women, it doesn't agree with them, some women can't take it for various reasons. Um, but yeah, if it is an option for you, there are lots of different types that you can take.
Yeah, fantastic. And did you have any feelings about wearing the patches? Like, how did it, in terms of people seeing it? Were you bothered? Were you kind of okay wearing it and for people to see it? Not that it should be like anything to be embarrassed about or anything. I'm just sort of
Mm.
interested in how you found wearing them.
Yeah, no, so that was a thing for me when I first went to the GP and had that conversation. I was thinking, oh, patches would be more convenient. Just, put it on, forget about it for a few days. Um, but a visible kind of, thing that shows that I'm on HRT. So I have it on my bum, so it's like below the waist, kind of hidden, so not many people see it. But at that time, I was dating, and I did think, it did cross my mind, sort of, oh, if a guy sees it who I'm dating and asks what it's all about, will I be embarrassed about it? That's not an issue for me now. I'm just like, I feel a bit embarrassed that I felt like that, because it's like, so what? But I shouldn't be embarrassed about this. Um, so yeah, my thoughts there have definitely changed. Um, yeah.
Amazing, amazing. So thinking about where you are now in terms of, you're on your
Mm.
HRT to help with your symptoms. I'm assuming your quality of life is a lot better now. How are things for you now?
Yeah, things are really good, thank you. So I do feel kind of back to my old self. My sleep's a lot better. My anxiety's reduced. I feel much better in that regard. The only thing that's kind of bothering me a bit at the minute is my cycle, and I think commonly on HRT it can have an effect on your cycle. I'm finding that I'm not very regular. I'm bleeding a lot more often than I was, and getting some really heavy flows that have been quite difficult to. I have to be prepared for them. Um, so that's been a bit of a change that I'm kind of managing. But yeah, aside from that, it has been really, really positive. And as I say, I think that's quite common. that's something for me to speak to my GP about if it continues after the next few months.
Yeah, I hope you're able to get some answers with that, because like you said, you've got to be prepared if you're heading out, or like, going away for a weekend, something like that. Yeah. So Anna, yeah, you've had a very positive experience so far, which is amazing. If I could ask for maybe some advice from yourself using your experience, so for women who are maybe late 30s, early 40s, and starting to experience some changes happening with them, their bodies, maybe their cycle, similar to anxiety, what sort of advice would you give to them?
I would say if you can make lifestyle changes, that's only going to benefit you in so many ways in the long term. And speak to people, if you haven't got people close to you who you feel like you can speak to, the internet's a great way to find like-minded people who are going through similar things. There's lots of support groups now. I think there's seems to be lots of perimenopause support groups kind of popping up. So you can find people that you can speak to, and speak to your GP. See if there's a perimenopause specialist at your GP surgery that you can speak to. And something that was helpful for me as well, listening to podcasts, reading books, try and kind of read up on it and learn more about what you're going through. And again, it's just to empower you and help you to cope with what's to come, because it's a big change. And yeah, I think having the knowledge and the awareness to be able to deal with it, and if you can help other people who are going through the same thing, then yeah, that's fantastic.
Perfect advice there, Anna. Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining me and sharing your story with us today. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on.